Today being a Wednesday, Wednesdays are normally dedicated, on the Big Breakfast, Wednesdays are normally dedicated to women, sharing women's issues and women development, successes of women, challenges. And today I've got two guests from WLSA, Sakhile Shabango, together with Zanele Tabete Vilagati. And we're going to kick off the show with Sakhile. Sakhile, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning, JT, and very good morning to every listener out there who's listening in today.
Today we're talking about bringing it down to the basics, just to give the listener an understanding of gender issues.
Yeah.
Probably let's talk about gender and what is gender and how it's different from sex, yeah.
I like the fact that, we actually took it back down before we understand the macro issues about gender-related things,
Yeah.
In a nutshell, gender refers to the socially attributed constructs that society gives to individuals. But before you talk about that, let's understand sex.
Yeah.
Sex has to do with the biological makeup. You have a female and a male.
Yeah.
And anatomically speaking, a woman has a vagina and other reproductive organs as well, and a man has a penis and other reproductive organs as well. So that is sex in its most basic form.
Yeah.
It's not the same as gender. Now, I want us to also understand that, with sex, there are different variations of the biological makeup, which is quite a topic for another day. But that is sex in its own. And then gender then becomes the constructs that society sort of adopts and gives to the different sexes that we have in society, right?
Yeah.
Women and men. That is then becomes the attributes that society then sort of gives to. For instance, a man is said to be masculine. It's those gender roles that then take into play for that specific biological makeup because of what society deems it to be, right?
Yeah.
And women are said to be feminine as well, so those are the gender roles that then come in.
Yeah.
But when it comes to sex, it's just strictly biological makeup, so we can never use the two interchangeably, right?
Yeah.
Now, what we also need to understand is that when it comes to gender varies. Gender roles vary, in the sense that different cultures have different gender roles, and which is actually to show that the different gender roles that are attributed by different societies says that cultures are different. And by virtue of cultures being different, it means culture is malleable and it's constantly changing. You come to our country, we have a patriarchal construct that believes men are providers, men are protectors. Those are the roles that are given to men. And women are said to be nurturers, and by virtue of being nurturers, they take care of families, they take care of children and the husband, and so on and so forth. The gender divide then comes in when these gender roles are said to be the two genders can't participate in each other's genders. Gogutsi, for this one, it's just strictly this, and for this one, it's strictly that. That's when we have the problems. Gender roles then come into play in the sense that, for instance, we look at a man. A man is said to dominate in all leadership spheres. We can't have women there because that's what society has sort of taught us. And then a woman's place for the longest time has been said to be the kitchen because a woman is a nurturer. Now, those gender roles are coming because of what society has said. You go to other countries back in the day, probably 50, 60 years ago, men in Egypt were weavers, something you wouldn't find, and women were the opposite. In our country, for the longest time, men have been the hunters and gatherers, and women were the gatherers, actually, and preparing the food, and et cetera, et cetera. The problem then comes in when these roles are said to be, one can't come this side and this one come this side. And that's a challenge. Right now, we're in the 21st century. Women want to participate in decision-making positions, And if women want to do that and they're underrepresented on a large scale, that's the problem because women are said to, you need to stay at home. That's the challenge. Now these roles can't be switched. Gani, the truth is, gender roles can be switched. And the switching of gender roles gives a gender balance in society.
But isn't it going to confuse one? I mean, if you're coming out and saying that gender roles can be switched, isn't it not going to confuse my understanding of the way, basically the way I've been brought up, and my culture, and it creates a confusion, right?
We can say it may create a confusion of some sort, but I think let's take it back to sex roles. Sex roles are the the roles that one sex can't give to the other. For instance, reproduction. A woman can't do what a man does, biologically speaking, and a man can't do the same thing that a woman does. A man can't bear children. So that's where it can never be switched. But with gender roles, according to that particular society, and because society is constantly changing, the culture of society is constantly changing, it means it can be something that either evolves or changes. And once it changes, we have a balance. We're not saying, for instance, when we look at it like this, we've heard of some men talking about being house husbands, right? For the longest time, we've always thought that there's a role played mostly by women. But now a lot of men are coming out to say, no, I can actually be a house husband, and the woman wakes up in the morning and go fence for the family and comes back, and the man takes care of the children.
But don't you think? Okay, just on that alone, don't you think that depends basically on the man? Because probably the man in the home has probably lost his role and his function of being the provider, or maybe the sole provider, for instance. Mm-hmm. So he decides to adopt not really an expected society role, but a woman's role, because I mean now he's failed to stand up to be a man in probably what one may term a man's world.
Yeah. Very right. And while that man is at home doing that particular role, he is not going to want a lot of people to know about it, because it's something that men are generally inferior about. It's an inferiority complex. Yeah. It's something it's uncharted territory. It's something that we have not wanted to go into. Yeah. But as the world evolves, we're seeing a lot of women come out of their shell and actually doing their job well. So much so that we have a lot of women CEOs now. We have a lot of women participating in all sorts of spheres, and we have men as well participating there, and some are also, it's a matter of we're all at equilibrium. What a man is able to do, a woman can do. However, there's a certain limit to that. But once a particular thing then comes in to sort of invalidate or restrict a woman's right, then that's where the problem comes in. If there's no violation of that woman's right, then we don't have a problem. We have a constitution. The Bill of Rights speaks about the right to equality. All people are equal before the law, and also all people are supposed to enjoy.
But I want to believe, Sakhile, that's probably that is in the constitution. But for me, it's probably a general statement that basically needs interpretation. Yeah. So interpretation to the left or interpretation to the right. True. It all depends on really what you think. I might be wrong. Let me hear it from you.
Yeah. I think when we talk about, or when we look at the legal framework of our country, it makes sense. We have a constitution that promotes equal rights and everything. But then we have a culture that is also still trying to adapt to the new world of gender equality, Yeah. And those two, unfortunately, at the moment are not going hand in hand, because people still uphold certain stereotypes, and stereotypes that, they have had for the longest time. But now we're coming into a world of, we're becoming gender equal. So it's a matter of understanding the changing world.